Today I want to talk about trees and how there's likely one very large aspect of trees that they never talk about in school. And yeah, this is just a general issue with the education system, is that it's not an education system, it's an indoctrination program. And there's a reason why when you're in school and say learning about trees, how many times when you were doing something like learning about trees, did you go outside and make scientific observations about trees and perform your own experiments? I can personally say that never happened. Whenever we learned about something in school, we would just open up a textbook and just read what is written in our textbook and look at a bunch of cartoon diagrams, and somebody maybe would pop a movie in. And that's not science. That's not learning things. It's just a giant appeal to authority. And most of the time, they're selling you complete lies. And they're trying to keep you in the NASA outer space Fantasyland box. And a lot of big truths they just totally ignore, and they don't want you to figure it out. Like, for example, the moon, it gives its own light, and the light is cold, and they will never tell you that in school. Same thing about trees. Mostly what this video is about is trees. I believe a very large aspect of trees that people don't talk about is electrical. There's electricity in the air. The whole thing about power lines, why are there still so many power lines all over the place? If you drive by industrial centers, you'll see an overabundance of power lines. Like, they'll triple down or quadruple down on power lines, and it's clear that it's not a distribution system, it's a collection system. There's electricity in the air, and I think part of why trees are the way they are is electrical. I mean, look at this reverse lightning bolt. It looks exactly like a tree. So the whole idea, the design of a tree, God designed these things perfectly, and just, I mean, look at that. This is just amazing. The inverted lightning bolt that looks exactly like a tree. It's like a tree is built to suck electricity out of the atmosphere as efficiently as possible. That's just what I read from this. And when you look at a tree upside down, it looks exactly like a lightning bolt. This is a really interesting phenomenon. I think what is it called? Canopy shyness or crowd shyness. It's like they know to not interfere with one another's electricity harvesting. Just a really interesting image. Look how much like upside down lightning bolts trees look like. And just other things about this, notice how it's not blocking out all the light. A lot of times it seems like with leaves, it's just not the whole story. Oh, leaves photosynthesize and turn sunlight into whatever. But that's just not the whole story. There's more to trees than photosynthesis. And I think that you can just tell by the structure of what a tree is that it's more than just trying to suck up sunlight. Otherwise, leaves would all be bigger, and it would just be total blockout at the top. And I don't know, just to me, I can tell that there's more to the story than just collecting sunlight. And look how tall up these are stretching. Why would they have to become so tall if their main purpose was to just collect sunlight? And yeah, just some things to think about. I think it's really interesting that when they camouflage a telecommunication tower or an antenna, they make it look like a tree. It's really interesting. Look at these, tree antenna, using trees for radio transmission. What an interesting idea. These diagrams are really cool. And I can just say that I've noticed this, to me it seems like a more and more common thing. I see people putting things up in trees, putting satellite dishes. Satellites are not real. You cannot get past the firmament. There's no such thing as outer space land. And what they do is they bounce signals off the dome, off the firmament. And I've seen a lot of stuff up in trees these days. A lot of people put these telecommunication things up inside of trees. Yeah, and these things, I mean, this is called a tree antenna. No, it looks like it has the similar shape of a pine tree. Just kind of sideways. This is actually not a real tree. It's disguised as a cherry blossom or something. but it's just an antenna. I mean, it looks more obvious here. So that was interesting. This just looks like photo, like, that doesn't look like real life, but this was some green energy is a big hoax. And because electricity has always been harvested just out of the atmosphere, atmosphere is a terrible word, out of the air. Electricity has always been harvested out of the air, and it's clean and it's free and it doesn't require a bunch of plastics and moving parts. So all of this stuff, it's like smoke and mirrors, trying to make energy collection seem more complicated than it is, because really it's just power lines. But to me, this was just a really interesting idea of the leaves are like mechanically harvesting energy, which I think also can be one aspect of the way that trees work. The leaves can mechanically harvest energy by swinging back and forth. I think might be one aspect of it. So here I have a few interesting videos. Give some volume. So look at the plant when this person claps. So this is a special type of grass. Here's another video. Oh, see the leaves at the top moving? So that's kind of interesting. So one thing that I think that wind blowing on grasses is one way that electricity is generated into the sky, into the air, the ether. This was a really cool website. I guess I'll try to link this in the description. When you rub two materials together, some combinations can cause or create more static electricity. Static electricity is electricity. I think that that's some type of spellcraft to make people think of them as two different things. There's no difference between static electricity and electricity. It's all electricity. And what is in the ether, what is in the air is, I believe, static electricity that just gets built up through natural processes like wind blowing on grass. This was just a really cool list. Materials that gain a positive electrical charges tend to give up electrons. Air. Air has the greatest tendency for giving up electrons and becoming highly positive in charge. Well, okay, so that makes sense. This right here basically explains the way that lightning works, because the air is giving up a bunch of electrons and they're getting stored up in the clouds. I don't know, they must make these highly negative pockets up in the ether, and then they discharge on the ground. Dry human skin. So this was, did anyone here that took a physics class in electromagnetism probably saw their teacher do something about a rabbit fur. And I think that's a really interesting choice of fur. We know magic, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. When I was in physics, I saw they definitely used a rabbit fur, and they made sure to point out that it was the fur of a rabbit. And you take this like plastic rod or something and rub it on rabbit fur, and it creates electricity. They love static electricity is electricity. This just bugs me so much when I see this now. It's the same thing. They want you to think of it as like two different phenomenons. But what makes a blender go really is the same thing as when you rub your feet on the ground and get a shock. It's all electricity. The old TV screens used to have a bunch of glass. The glass on your TV screen gets charged. I don't think most TVs work like that anymore. Human hair, flyaway hair. So I guess just something interesting that I'll throw out there. The hair near your temples is like extremely wispy and thin, and it could be electrical. And I've just noticed myself, like the hair right at my temple is like super, super thin and very wispy. And yeah, sometimes it's like flyaway hair right there. And this also reminds me of Think about Hasidic Jews that they keep that temple hair and they curl it and make it really long. It could be something to do with electricity, and it's interesting that it's at the human temple. And yeah, I'll just keep going. Materials that are relatively neutral: cotton and steel. So the list above was going one way. You have stuff going one way and you have stuff going another way. And I think it's really interesting that so the air was most likely to give up electrons, and what they put at the top of the list of gaining electrons is wood. So that's really interesting. Attracts some electrons, but it's almost neutral. Amber. Huh. Hard rubber, nickel, copper. Anyways, you can go through, look at these things. Saran wrap. And some of these, it's like, oh, yeah. Saran wrap does act really strange. It really clings. It clings to stuff. I guess what this reminds me of, too, like trash bags, how when you buy a big pack of trash bags, if you buy really thin trash bags, they come really tightly wound up. Well, in the nighttime, I've been and like unrolled really quickly to get a new trash bag, and the static electricity, or the electricity from unrolling getting a new trash bag, it flung off light. There was so much electricity built up that light was flinging off when I just quickly grabbed a new trash liner. Thought it was interesting, Teflon. I wonder if that has something to do with the non-stick properties. The best combinations of materials to create static electricity would be to have one material from the positive charge list and one from the negative charge list. Well, like wood and air. So wood was on one of those lists and air was on the other list. So like trees in the air. So there's these things called Van der Graaf generators, and they generate electricity through just building up electricity, static electricity. It is the same thing as electricity. They have this, it's like a rubber thing, and then they have these metal combs. These are like these metal combs, and there's a rubber belt, and it just keeps running around and around and around really fast, and it creates static electricity. So here I'll just point out, my brother lives on the second story, and he has a few computers up there and the routers up there, and there's a bunch of fans going all the time because there's multiple computers up there, and it's a small room, second story, and there's shag carpeting. If you go into that room for like 5 seconds, you'll start shocking things. And so that's something that's just kind of stuck with me ever since I would go visit, and I would just be so electrically charged just being up in the room. And now I know, it's because there's a bunch of fans up there, and there's shag carpeting up there, and it's the second story. Probably the higher you go up too, the more electricity is available. And I don't know if that works forever. There's probably a sweet spot for where there's most electricity. I guess this is just a thought I had. You know how trees only grow up to a certain level? Maybe the reason trees stop growing up to a certain level is because the electricity in the ether changes, and it's not really there at that point anymore. I'm not sure. It's just a thought I had. Okay, so I want to show this video. There's no reason to dox yourself. I don't understand why people do this.
I want you to look at something. Wouldn't you call this kind of strange? The way these leaves on this tree are shaking and no...
Just for future reference for people, if you're going to make videos, there is no reason that you need to dox yourself, show your face on these things. People are... I don't know why people are so interested in showing people their face. Just show the message.
Leaves nowhere else on other trees are shaking like this. Look at this. Look at the leaves waving back and forth. You see this?
That one at the bottom was really going there.
Now it's starting to stop. But look over here. Same kind of tree.
So that's an interesting phenomenon you should be able to witness for yourself. And that's mostly it for this video. I guess I just want to point out one more thing. Christmas trees. It's kind of strange that we put lights on Christmas trees. And, I mean, I guess I shouldn't say we there, but it just sucks. It really sucks how satanic and pagan this whole place is. And the Bible directly speaks out against Christmas trees, but you still get most churches out there are fine putting Christmas trees. And in fact, if you bring it up, if you show them, hey, look, the book of Jeremiah specifically mentions Christmas trees as being pagan, they just pretend like you're not saying anything. They'll just ignore you. And so that, just one more thing that I thought was really interesting. People put lights on Christmas trees. I'll just end with one more thing. Here's my car. Notice how half of my car is very icy and the other half is not icy. It's because the half that's not icy is behind this tree. These are two trees. And if you go to just your average high school teacher and ask them about this stuff, I guess they'll say something about insulation. Well, the tree is insulating this side of the car, but not this side of the car. But that's a bunch of BS. How is this insulating anything? It's a bunch of little twigs. And what it is this side of my car was in moon shade. Moon shade is warmer than moonlight. The moon gives its own light. The moon is cold. Last night, it was fairly clear. So it looks like they were chemming a little bit, but last night was fairly clear. When I woke up this morning, it was so iced over. It was extremely frosty outside because it was a clear sky and there was a full moon out, and the moon is cold. Anyways, this is just something that you should look out for. Moon shade is warmer than direct moonlight. Yep, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. God bless everyone.